So our second one, tariffs and trade wars, and implications for Australia and the US. So the recent US tariff actions, especially under President Trump, have reshaped the global trade landscape. So if we examine the impact using aggregate and demand, aggregate supply model. So for Australia, US tariffs on Australian exports such as steel and aluminium reduce demand for our goods, shifting Australia's aggregate demand curve leftward. So we can see in the first graph how it's kind of shifting to the left. Ultimately, Australian products will be less sought after because they are more expensive. So it makes more sense for the US to use US created or produced items. This leads to a lower GDP, higher unemployment, and downward pressure on inflation for Australia. The Reserve Bank of Australia notes that about 85% of the GDP decline from tariffs comes from reduced exports, which in turn lowers domestic income, consumption, and possible investment. So, not good things for Australia. But for the United States, tariffs may provide short-term protection for domestic industries, infant industries, and increase national security, but they also raise input costs, increase consumer prices, and provoke retaliation. So the USAIDAS model predicts that tariffs shift the aggregate supply curve left due to higher input costs, raising inflation and reducing output. So as we can see here, so instead of demand changing, it's supply shifting left. So in a bad direction. We don't want that. So the Tax Foundation estimates that tariffs could lower US GDP, reduce full-time employment, and lower after-tax incomes. So we can also see in the graphs how we have a deadweight loss in both graphs, which indicates there's a loss of economic activity due to the tariffs, which is undesirable for a thriving economy. So the broader implications for Australian businesses. So there might be supply chain disruption, tariffs increase costs and delays, especially for firms with complex international supply chains, or those sourcing from China, which faces its own hefty tariffs. And uncertainty, so trade tensions create unpredictability, making it harder to plan, invest, or price products confidently for a business. Increases competitiveness, so Australian exporters may lose market share or face squeezed margins in the US and other affected markets. So for our organisation,